Hey guys, I'm with Avex now, as I was literally just with Science, so no attempt at foolery here. This is literally 10 minutes later. But anyways, I'm here with Avex, who is a map maker, but I'll let him talk about what he does and who he is. Just looking forward to this one. I haven't actually talked to a map maker yet, so I have a bunch of questions. Hopefully it's not super long, but in a time limit, the batteries, so it probably won't be. But anyways, let's just start off. So introduce yourself, like who you are and what you usually do in StarCraft.
I think the people who watch your stuff probably know who I am at this point, but my name's Avex. I am kind of like the go-to map maker in the scene. Most people, including pro players, casters, will come to me if they have questions. Blizzard talks to me quite frequently. Most people will know me for, right now at least, Fracture. Blackpink would be my most recent maps, Backwater, and then as you go further back, less popular maps. But yeah, all I really do is I kind of control the map scene. I kind of like dictate what's good and what's bad, because we are getting like an influx of newer map makers now these days, because a lot of the other ones are too old. They're retiring. Many of the old names are somewhat around, but not nearly as active as they used to be. So it's a lot of me running my own Discord and telling people, like, you can't do this, and then, I mean, it's not that black and white, but you would
it's
kind
like
of
God Avex here.
I mean, that is my Discord title.
Okay.
So like it's stuff like that. So I kind of like I run over everything and kind of help people guide. It's more about guiding rather than like judging hard. But I do judge hard sometimes, because we've had instances of users in the past coming in with god complexes, and you kind of have to like shut that down really hard. I won't name names.
There's so many things to dissect from this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's all I do really.
So I guess to expand on how you got into it, because you said like people who watch my stuff might know you, and that's certainly true. But can you like talk about when you got into map making and then your progression to where you are now?
Yeah. So I've you know Brown Bear. I've talked. I did an article.
Yes.
Did an article with Brown Bear that went through all of my beginnings. But to put it shortly, I've always been a creative kind of person. As a kid, I played with the Brood War map editor. The Warcraft 2 map editor was kind of like my beginnings. And then throughout early childhood was mainly Brood War mapping, and then the emergence of like SCM Draft and Star Forge were the editors at the time. Just like breaking the engine around. So like now everyone knows third-party editors for like the ramps in Brood War. How they're all put together like tile by tile.
Okay.
So you would kind of create like structures out of that. So I could create like a pyramid by just like a bunch of those individual things. So I'd make like UMS maps based around that. And I kind of just kept doing that for most of my time. StarCraft 2 came out. I didn't get a key, my best friend did. So I then tried messing with that editor, Warcraft 3 as well. Just kind of cycling with those, and didn't really get too competitive with the game, StarCraft 2 at least, until like 2013, so kind of late. But after that, it was working on the Starbow project was a big, the big kind of push for me, really getting to know how the editor works and communicate with itself. And then it was dive into Melee in Legacy, and it kind of just took off from there.
Okay, all right, yeah. Yeah, I know some of those words that you used when I spoke to Joey, who had similar beginnings in the UMS stuff, but that's cool.
For Brood War?
Yeah, for Brood War.
If you have questions about any of the terms, feel free to stop me, because it's kind of hard to remember sometimes that it is lingo and jargon that not everyone knows.
Yeah, right? Or like any of the old websites that like a lot of people went to in Brood War, I just wasn't really a part of. But anyways, okay, so Legacy of the Void was kind of your real jumping off point. And now almost, like, if you know anything about maps, most people do know the name Avex, but I've always been interested in, like, the actual process of it. And the community behind it has always been interesting as well. But
that's one way to put it.
We'll go with process first. Mapmaking as a skill. So, you know, right now you are pretty damn good. You usually get pretty highly ranked in all the Team Liquid map contests and whatnot. Like, they pick a trash person to actually like send all their maps into the ladder. That's what happens. That's him.
Yeah, that's me.
You're good, right?
So.
But like, what are some of the things that you've learned that makes a really good map? What are some of the pitfalls that you think people always fall into? And like, I mean, try and use basic.
Yeah,
info,
I'll
I guess.
try. It's funny how, because like I actually feel like the strength of what makes a good map is a pitfall in itself.
Okay.
So I'll use the easiest example. So how I got really into melee map making was opening up really popular maps and measuring everything. There's a measure tool you can use. It's
Measuring.
It's just literally like the line formula. It tells you the distance between 2 points.
Okay.
And I was using that to like measure every single thing. How far, like, you know, overgrowth, right? The natural.
Yes.
How far is the CC to like the center point of like that area kind of out of it? I was just doing that everywhere.
Okay.
And so that really got me into making really good standard maps for a bit. So that's why Blackpink is like so efficient.
Okay. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but you're saying like what makes a basic map, because that's like another really big broad topic, so maybe I should wait.
What is like the
why
map?
are there some maps that are really basic and why are there some ones that are really weird besides the obvious?
I
I
think
guess
that
like
depends on the author and like what they want to do.
yeah, but the community generally, like, you know, we say like Daybreak's a standard, we say Overgrowth's a standard, we say
want the community
yeah, like,
aspect?
and then I'm like, well, I hear you talk and you're like, you know, you learn how to make basic general maps.
What is a general basic
and you're saying
map?
like a lot of the times it's just distance between stuff.
Well, that's how I learned
Okay.
to do it. Was there was a lot of dumb numbers that I was told, like a main should be 33 command centers squished together. Like that's really arbitrary
Okay.
in its own way, but it worked. The easier way is 2 creep tumors should cover the whole thing roughly.
Actually, I can see that.
If it's
more
like
often.
too much, you generally have like nidus and dropping problems. But
Wow.
not to sidetrack too much, if you were asking like what really is like the kind of gold standard, like what is a basic standard map, that's evolved over time.
True.
I wasn't around for Wings to really get that because that was kind of a weird
also,
time.
Wings was kind of weird. So.
Yeah, Weird didn't really have, or Wings didn't have really a standard. It kind of did with
I
like
mean,
Daybreak,
Daybreak,
but in Cloud Kingdom. But like outside of that,
Oh,
there
yeah.
was a lot of other maps that were kind of odd.
Yes.
Heart of the Swarm was really when you kind of started seeing the really good mappers that some are still around, like Cantuva, IAZL, Super Omen, Iron Man kind of came around. So it's always changed. Heart of the Swarm, I think, is the easiest to point out what a standard one was, just because it took the best of Wings and then like just refined it over and over and over and over. And I think Overgrowth is pretty much the best example of that. The reason being the third base is kind of where we always draw how good is like a map in terms of standard.
Yes, yeah.
It's actually becoming more of like the third and fourth nowadays, but when I think of standard and Heart of the Storm, I think Overgrowth, Echo, stuff like that. Even Cloud Kingdom kind of worked as well. Just because, without going too specific in numbers, the distance between natural and main and nat and third, and like the distance to the ramp, rush distance is all like pretty much within the same range. It's like 7 units difference. Like it's really tight. So, as you...
It's perfect.
Did it die?
I think I might have actually, yeah.
That was 20 minutes?
No.
Yeah, it was not 20 minutes.
It was 8 minutes.
Yeah, it was not
8 minutes. This is super obvious, not, you know, anything different than what you just saw, guys.
Nothing happened?
Nothing happened. But I have a genius solution, so you still get the interview, which is great. So what we're talking about was I brought up like what makes a basic map, because I was like surprised that you were talking about numbers of all things, and you kind of mentioned like, oh, the size of a main base is like 2 creep tumors or however 33 command centers.
I already forgot what I said.
Yeah,
It's
something like
it's
that.
somewhere between like 32 and 35.
Yeah, something like that. And then we were kind of getting on to what else makes a really basic map. So you were also saying third and fourth bases, which that's always what I heard is like the most data maps in StarCraft 2. At least were the ones that had accessible third bases, if not fourths as well.
It's really interesting because like it's race dependent too. So Zergs have the least issue with any sort of third base being wherever. I mean, obviously it can't be like across the map like Brood War, but like if you take Daybreak, right, it came back for Legacy for like way too long.
Well, I mean 2 months, right? It was for the Dream
Yeah,
Pool.
that's too long.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Zergs were fine because that third was like hella far, but Protoss was like, what the hell is this? Like, I can't play with this. They could, but it was tough. So it's stuff like that, and then you start getting to finer details with how thirds are laid out. Like, they can't be too exposed. They need to have like a certain distance between the mineral line and the cliff next to it, just for like error drop, harassment, stuff like that. Generally, how I design a third base in distance is 2 tumors from the if you have I would do everything by creep. Creep is really nice to do measuring because it's always a set distance.
Not because you're a Zerg player?
Well, I'm actually more Terran nowadays.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because quick side tangent. Started in Brood War Protoss, then went to Terran for a little bit, and then Protoss started in Wings when I played the beta,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went Terran full in Swarm, and then I'm like, I kind of want to try Zerg, and I did the inject thing.
Okay.
I'm not gonna touch that balanced little thing, but Zerg was really easy to like click into. Once you get
Okay.
injects down, you can kind of do whatever. Especially when you hit Masters as Terran, like Zerg inject is not that hard. I feel.
That's something I'm pretty good at.
But I've gone back to Terran because
Okay.
I just got kind of bored. Also, fuck mech.
I mean, do you do mech though?
No, I'm just saying.
You join
like,
them?
No, I
Okay.
in Brood War though I do.
Well,
Obviously.
who doesn't?
But
anyways,
yeah, as we were saying,
creep's a good.
yeah, creep's really good because it's always the same. Tumors is always the same size. Hatchery is always the same size. So I do a third bases from every base I make has a hatchery on it, and then I do a creep tumor right on the very edge,
Mhm.
and I do it again, and I see how much it takes to get them to fully connect. And usually about 2 or 2.5 is really good for third base distance. If it's a little over, it's usually not too bad. 3 is like pushing it. If it's over that, it's not viable. At least in Legacy of the Void, it's not viable.
I feel like every time I'm going to clean up creep tumors around the natural to third, I'm going to think of you now.
Oh yeah, cleaning up like nat creep is like really good. Like
Well, yeah, but I'm just like I'll be like 1 and it's 2.
oh,
and
you're seeing how
yeah,
you
like
can
this is an Avex map.
The weird thing, I think most of the good people will do the same thing because
Okay.
I've implanted it so much in their heads. A bit of it from playing Terran and Protoss, seeing how frustrating it is to see third bases. So if any pro player is watching, I get it. I get how frustrating third bases being too far is, but it's kind of hard sometimes. I'm one of the Mapmakers who believes in efficient use of space, which is why I never liked Frozen Temple, because Frozen Temple has a lot of wasted space. Even
the
though
one where you went behind the third base.
Frozen,
No, that was
Frozen,
not.
Frozen,
That was Polar Night.
No, Frozen Temple was in 2016. It had main nat was pretty normal.
Yeah.
And had that thing down the middle, and then you kind of went around for everything else. There was like the rocks in like the side-ish. It had a base that was kind of like outward. Everyone loved it because it was like the only like okay map at the time.
It did sound like something that people were favorable of.
It was an okay map, but like the problem with a lot of players is they'll consider maps that are okay really good in context of the maps around them. So like Dust Towers, everyone loves Dust Towers because it's like free 4 base. Does that make it a good map though?
I didn't like it actually.
From like a design standpoint, I don't think it's a good map because
okay.
it's like what's fun about giving people 4 bases for free?
Yeah. And there's like so many. Again, this could be one of the longest interviews, honestly, if I wasn't cut by technical issues. But I'll try and keep it streamlined. So, that kind of like there's this whole thing they tell you about what makes a good map, but that's like way too.
It's a really
it's a
large
long
topic.
process, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of small details. We before technical issues, we talked a bit. There's a lot of fine details when it comes to a really good standard map. I could give a new person like a set of rules and say do these things, and they'll make a fine standard map. But there's details that are missing that make it really good.
Yeah.
So it's a difference between like a Black Pink and an Abyssal Reef, and then versus like Acid Plant.
Yeah.
Acid Plant's fine, but is it great? Debatable.
I guess.
So it's kind of that stuff.
Yeah, there's a ton of like so. And one of the things I wanted to bring up was like how pro gamers like think that their maps versus the community versus like what makes is prettiness actually a fact? Like we'll get into all of that basically, but the next thing, because we're talking kind of like this whole thing is going to be as a skill, like literally learning skills and. Like, what is your process to making a map? Do you actually draw out like a draft?
I personally don't, but there's a couple of mappers. Everyone kind of does different things. I think the mapper Jackie, you probably remember Jackie, New Gettysburg and all that, and a lot of older maps. I'm pretty sure he uses grid paper and draws, or I'm thinking of another Korean mapper. I can't remember. I know a couple people who draw. I freeform everything.
So you just open up the map
editor? I got to a point where I know what everything looks like, like just by drawing it in the editor and go, that's too big, that's too small, and this is just right. And I just kind of go. For me as a process, I come in from an art perspective usually. Mm-hmm. So I've been a little inactive lately because of my job, but let's go back to like last year, right, when I was making Blackpink, right? Obviously, K-pop was a big influence.
Yeah.
So thinking of how can I make a black and pink map, and what would it look like, and what would it be like? So I was mainly influenced growing into mapping by Cantuva. He has a very, very specific style of mapping, which can be mostly seen for most people by Echo. Very
I was gonna
boxy.
say, like, give us an example.
Yeah, very, very boxy, but has some like nice creative elements.
Yeah, Echo was a nice, pretty map.
Yeah, but like it's almost minimalistic because it's a lot of repeated use
Yeah.
of models.
That was
not
along
too
with the
much,
map
but-
pool with Coda as well.
Yes.
Which that was quite, also pretty basic, but like good
Yeah.
enough.
So it's that kind of style was super influential to me. I think you've seen Ganymede, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ganymede was another Cantuva map. Super. That's probably my favorite map. But
I mean, it wasn't actually in the map pool. Right?
yeah,
It
but
was-
yeah, I know you would know it.
Yeah.
Good map. But anyway, so that style was super influential to me. So I'm like, what would my ideal map be? Probably in that stock was my favorite, and then inspired by K-pop. So I tried to get all the textures I could that was as close to like dark black, but not being like unreadable.
Yeah.
So I would basically take the decals, like neon lights, and then I'd just tint the shit out of it to be pink. And I raised the HDR, which is like, I think like specular lighting, how shiny it is. It's glowy,
I
basically.
was gonna say these are things I would know as an
Yeah.
animator modeler.
Yeah,
but-
so basically how shiny something as a material is. I'm upping that like a bunch, and it's a glowy, bloomy. That's
Yeah.
what you can see in the original Blackpink. Was very bright. I was retexturing things before that got banned. So I had like a bright pink. Yeah, I'll talk about it later. There was a bright pink, cloudy background too in the original Blackpink. It was very contrasting.
That might have been a little, yeah. And just as a subtext here, because I know him, so but this is probably gonna be very specific to you, right? Like as you said, some people like to draw it out, but you
Yeah.
come from an art background. You are, if you didn't know this, if you didn't figure it out or anything, he is mostly known for very pretty maps.
Yeah.
So when he comes in and says like this is what I focused on, I'm sure there's gonna be plenty of other map makers that are like, that's the last thing we think of, right? Like I don't think
Yeah,
of how
there's
pretty
plenty.
it's going to be or how
No, yeah.
much of a map it looks cohesiveness wise. I just hope that it works well for
Yeah,
the pro gamers.
there's plenty of mappers who do different
Yeah, so you're gonna
approaches.
focus a lot on that, but then let's say beyond that, right? Like you choose your design, you choose how you're gonna execute the design, then you build the map, right? You actually do the whole like build the
I don't.
naturals.
Like I said, I do freeform, so I never choose what I want. It just happens.
But you still, well, the point is you still like get into you actually literally make the map.
Yeah, I
Yes.
make as I go. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. But then, do you yourself test it on different races just versus AI, or actually,
No.
I don't even know if that's how it would
I
work.
don't. At
Well,
all.
you just submit it and you're like,
Yeah,
hey,
I-
test this out for me.
It depends. It also depends how much money I have at the time. But I've gone to the point where I know when something's not going to work, or how something's going to play out. I generally play games in my head as I'm making stuff.
Wow.
I envision how it works, and usually it is pretty accurate. But there are specifics because like the thing is like the meta is pretty stable
Yeah.
now, so
yeah.
I can get how I know how every unit like functions in my head pretty.
I just like.
So
I'm not trying to add into like a god complex or something, but
No.
it feels like I'm talking to oh, actually, wow, I'm an art major and I can't remember. The guy who did the Sistine Chapel. Holy shit, Michelangelo.
yeah,
There you go.
Michael.
And the way that he looked at statues.
Yeah,
Yeah, like everyone said that the way that you do it is you build up to what you want, but he chipped away till he got
chipped
what he
away.
wanted.
It's
so it's
something
the opposite
similar,
of what you
yeah.
usually do, and people were like, "Oh my god, he's a genius," and I'm
No,
like, I'm listening to you, and I'm like, this doesn't sound like it's the way it's supposed to be done. Like I don't know.
A lot of the other mappers, it depends who you ask. A lot of them don't test either, but mainly because no one wants to. That's a big problem.
Okay.
So it's not even. Let's pretend I wasn't like doing it in my head and I wanted to get something tested. It's really hard. If I didn't
Yeah.
have my name, it'd be extremely difficult.
Yeah.
So that's where I talked about the money thing is because people know me and they trust my maps. I can generally go out, like let's say like Game Time with streaming, Puck, Future. He doesn't stream, but he's around. Pig, Winter, Neuro. They're all very helpful, and I'll oftentimes like throw in money, and be like, "Here's $100. You want to play best of 7 on the map?" They go, "Sure," and that's all I need. Is stuff like
Yeah.
that. If I really, really need, if I'm really proud, usually the better maps I have, I will make them test.
Interesting.
Like Year Zero and the most recent contest, I had a lot of people test.
Well, so it's kind of maybe a tangent thing, but like when maps are released into the ladder, there's so much to this process. By the way, we could talk about this for days as well.
Yeah,
but
it's
let's
a long.
let's just focus on this. When they're released into the ladder, usually after the Team Liquid map contest, there's always some complaints, right? Like,
Sure.
hey, this this thing is broken. But what it sounds like, as someone who doesn't truly, go to the nitty-gritty, is that a lot of times it's Blizzard did something wrong.
Usually not recently. They've been pretty good about it.
Yeah,
but in the past, it was a problem.
Yeah, I think the past year I haven't really heard too many discussions, but that used to be one of the big issues, is that you guys would be like, well, you screwed up our map. So
that was sick.
There's like a bunch of really sick cosplayers that walk past us. I
Holy
would
shit.
I would show if this was not the most janky setup anyways. But anyways, but then what I'm hearing is basically despite not actually testing it that thoroughly, most of the time you don't have those weird tank spots or liberator spots.
It's been a long time since I've had one of those things.
There was one map where there was a broken ramp that was kind of weird. I actually can't remember.
I think 16-bit had that problem when it was on pre-ladder. Remember how they'll upload a week before? 16-bit northmost point had a ladder problem, and I was like, I don't know what you guys did, but that needs to be fixed.
But it's not really your guys's. You just actually are
are
fairly good at thinking of everything.
When you stare at a map, zoomed out along it, you'll notice the tiniest crap that's wrong.
Huh.
So even if it's because let's say a map is Blackpink, the dimensions are 148 by 140. If I scroll all the way, I can tell you any problem from fully zoomed out.
Weird.
Yeah, when you stare at it long enough, you'll notice the tiniest things.
It's like a whole new world.
But yeah, Blizzard, like I said, lately Blizzard's pretty good.
Yeah.
They generally don't mess around, and a lot of the times they do mess around. It's a QA thing, so I like to create art things, right? So on Fracture, there's a lot of models that were not seen by Melee forever. They were campaign stuff, and I moved them over.
Oh.
Well, technically they were in the files, but I had to create a new actor for it, and then moving it to ladder, Blizzard had to make the same actors I did, and now it's in the game again.
And actors are.
Okay, I'll be really, really brief. Base model, right? Something you create in a model editor,
Okay.
right? So that is your model, your mesh, and all that. Actor is what ties the model to everything else.
Okay.
It's it's just a nice point that everything comes from. So sound is attached to that, wireframes, portraits, animation cycling, and all that. It's all through the actor.
Okay, right. So there's a ton of assets that aren't really shown a ton.
Oh, there's a lot of assets.
But there's because I feel not every single time, but there's a lot of times you'll be like, oh my god, that's a really cool asset, and where did that come from? And I guess it's an issue of actually implementing it.
Some of the assets are also just too big.
Okay.
There's a bunch of trees that are literally labeled giant. Don't use them. They're way too big. You can always scale it down, but yeah, there's a lot of models that you won't see probably ever because they're just ridiculous. And there's other models that are just too detailed for QA. They drop your frame rates if there's too many of them, or too many particle effects kind of thing. So there's a lot that you won't see, but there are plenty that don't have that much impact. Year Zero has a couple that I moved over from co-op. Really cool.
There's a couple maps that were almost laughably bad in the sense that I felt like someone didn't get it tested. And one I can think of is
name.
One I'm thinking of is Dash and Terminal, where the light.
That was a little before me, but yeah.
But the light literally blinded anyone who loaded in, and even after they tuned it down, because that was the biggest complaint, was that it was still really bright. And I'm just I'm listening to you say usually you can kind of tell when things are going to be really poor, and
so
I'm just what happened with that one?
Problems with lighting like that is usually a monitor issue. The person who's making it has their monitor set a certain way, so that's
right. Everyone
doesn't bother.
Different.
Yeah, it doesn't bother them, but then they upload it and it's oh my god, my eyes. People were complaining about Fracture being too bright too when it got put on ladder.
Oh, because of the snow.
It's snow, yeah, and everyone's been doing dark maps the past year and a half. But
yeah. Is there a
standard?
A standard, yeah, exactly.
Kind of how Volume has a standard. Not really. No.
Oh, okay.
It's really hard because everyone has their own different thing. Every pro has it, and there's all different settings. That blinding white on Fracture might not be white on low settings. It might be more of a gray.
I know.
So it's really hard to.
How much does that actually become a pain? The whole low, medium, high for Mapmakers.
I don't pay attention. I don't think anyone does.
I don't think it's really been that much of an issue as far as I remember on your maps. That's more of a skin issue for Blizzard to deal with.
The whole shaders thing. No, the last thing I can think of was hybrid settings on Abyssal Reef was a problem.
The
sand.
Specific hybrid settings.
Yeah. Because the way they handled low textures but high shaders was putting a low ground texture with a high lighting, and the sand was a white, grayish white, and it was It was really bad.
Yeah.
It's usually stuff like that. There's a
Okay.
problem. The only problem I have with low settings is there's a feature they added in Legacy called height mapping, which what the fuck? It's called bump mapping normally, where you
Yeah.
have a material or a surface, and then you have its normal map, and it kind of fills in cracks like bricks. You can do that in Legacy now. You can see it in a lot of maps.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Namaste, I know you know, had
Yeah.
a lot of using of that. Remember the grass and bricks kind of like melded?
Yeah, it would look. I mean, it just looked really nice and fluid.
It was height mapping.
Interesting. I didn't know that wasn't. I didn't know that wasn't a thing before that.
Yeah, everyone had to blend, like
Yeah,
blending
okay.
and all that. So you could do it manually if you wanted, but that's a pain in the ass.
Mhm.
But yeah, so like on low settings, height mapping does not exist.
Okay.
So it'll go back to blending, and obviously you can't
That's a
paint
change.
twice.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing, I'll talk very vague Photoshop. So you have like pencil and like airbrush, right?
Yeah.
Airbrush where it kind of fills out over time. Pencil's like. So if I used airbrush on height mapping over two textures, and it's like trying to gently fill in the cracks, that's gonna look like there's pencil and then airbrush over top of it instead of like it nicely filling in.
Yeah.
So if you go and play like Abyssal Reef and go from high settings to low, you'll see like weird hard edges everywhere, and that's the only annoying part about like going from high to low. Otherwise, it does not matter usually.
So to kind of like sum up this really like broad topic of mapping as a skill, I mean, you actually mentioned it when we had the difficulties, but like you could actually, I mean, we teach a class on this, right? Like there's already so many things you could teach a class on specifically, like all these terms you used, I somewhat learned when I did modeling. But that also was like literally a college course of its own for modelers. Map making could actually be like an entire
its own thing, yeah.
education.
I mean, level design. It means technically it's level design, right? Environment and level design.
Yeah, I guess
that's what I would do if I could, but
yeah, it's a good comparison.
Yeah, the closest thing would be level and environment design.
So it's like a shit ton, all right.
It's
like anyone who actually gets into map making is pretty impressive.
It's pretty daunting. Yeah, there's probably about 80% of the people who come in leave within the first 3 weeks.
I can imagine, and then I've heard all about how like StarCraft 2's editor is not really friendly.
The thing is, it's very, and I think Joey would attest to this too, especially when it gets to the data and stuff. It makes sense once you just get it.
Once you get that over the hump.
There's a very specific way everything talks to each other, and then once you figure out what that is, you kind of can get around everything.
Okay.
There's specifics that are more of a pain in the ass, like certain parts of data, and it's like just like a headache. Like creating a new unit sometimes can be just a pain.
Oh.
If you like,
that's not something
if
usually...
you like click one thing wrong, it's just like fuck, I got to do this all over again, and then it leaves over all this crap from the previous one. And you're just like, I got to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's annoying, but like it's not as bad as I think what people think.
Okay.
Especially with these Warcraft 3.
Your word for it. So I actually think I opened the Warcraft 3 map editor once. So
how'd that go?
Accidentally. It was
Warcraft
right
3
next to the actual Warcraft 3 icon.
The Warcraft 3 editor is actually really good.
No, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
So it's like usually that's where people learned it, even if they were playing Brood War originally.
Yep.
But okay, so to touch more specifically on something that I brought up to kind of describe you, aesthetics versus function. You say that aesthetics is kind of just what you go with, and that
That's how I start.
It's how you start, but then it sounds like the function isn't really a problem in your mind. Like you're good enough just to know what the function is and how it'll actually function.
So I just wiped my hard drive because I had to reinstall my Windows a couple months ago, which is annoying. But on that drive, I had probably 2,000 maps, and about 95% of them are the first 2-3 bases, and then they'll never be touched again.
Good lord.
And a lot of them is like I find something I like that looks nice, and I'll make a map around it and go, yeah, never mind, and just throw it. And generally I'll keep them there because I like that aesthetic. I haven't used a lot of them still, but sometimes I'll grab it and try again.
Yeah.
And usually it's just sometimes the aesthetic does not fit like a normal layout.
That's insane. That's
so yeah, it starts with art and then I free flow, and if I start seeing like that the layout is no longer fitting the art that it's coming from, I'll generally stop and I might switch art styles around, but that's generally harder. I have a map that's kind of like Martian-like, where it's all like it's white, gray, and red, and it looks really unique. Like no one's ever seen anything like this, but it's so specific of like a style. It's really hard to pull off like an actual layout for it.
interesting.
So it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, what I heard from this like 30-minute portion is just like there's so much to be involved in map making, and then I think you are one of the maybe outliers of map making. If I would love to go and poll like your Discord, for instance. That actually we should probably mention that you because you're talking about how
I keep
in
everyone
the beginning
in line.
like you keep everyone in line, and then you have a Discord, and that you help out the new people who come in. But I feel like if I polled that Discord, it would be like I'm sure we'd have various different ways of actually doing
starting
it.
And yeah, definitely, especially the ones that are around still who have been around longer than me. You get like -0, Cantuva, all have different styles from me.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I guess you compared it to level design. That's something that because people hear map makers, and I feel like it is one of those like to me it was one of those it's a very niche hobby that like how much work is really put into it sometimes.
Yeah.
That was a poor way of saying it.
No, I know what you meant. Because a lot of people will think, especially with the older RTSs, right? So I picture map making. I think of like Age of Empires 2, and like casually making a scenario where you like fight AI, and it's like it doesn't take much.
It's like I'm not saying I didn't think you guys put a lot of work into it. It was more just one of those like, well,
the term doesn't say much.
Yeah, I guess it just like. Yeah, so then you actually think of all the things that you do, how many maps you create as practice, and it's just like, oh, holy shit, like this is why like level design is actually like literally someone is hired for that, for literally like games, really right? So map making really is that for us, and actually I was going to continue talking about StarCraft maps versus like League of Legends characters, but you know what? Let's not go into that. The point is map making is important in StarCraft, and it's really cool that we have very technical, talented people who actually bother putting all this work in to make maps for very little reward as well. Like in terms of publicity and money. I mean, Blizzard. I mean, I feel like the ultimate goal for a lot of people is working at Blizzard, but even more so a necessity if like StarCraft 2 esports was actually the main focus. Let's be real. If it was Overwatch League, right? Like there'd be a team of map makers.
Oh, I know. I when Overwatch got announced, I said if they have an editor like that's a step because in StarCraft 2 it's 3D, but it's very much just 2D. You don't have much 3D. Like you're not looking up. You're not you're right. So like if Overwatch had that, it's so much more complicated, and it's just another step forward, right?
Yeah. So, it's insane. So I guess this kind of segues into and you can stop me at any point and be like, oh, I don't want to talk about that, but the politics of map making.
Oh, this is the funniest part. Go on.
Oh, okay.
This is great. I love this part.
Okay.
I love making enemies.
So I mean, like I'll just preface it with what I know as I'm kind of coming in here as like the.
You've experienced it.
Well, no. I mean, I've experienced a little bit, but I'm talking more like I'm the person who also is with most of you who are watching this video, and they're like, well, what? Like, well, map makers, like who, what, where, and while I know a little bit more, I'm still very much a newbie. But when I got into when I met you, I started talking to you, and then there was like this like these rumors going around of like this person hates this person, and I was like, what the shit is going on here? Yeah. But not to just simply just be like, what's the drama?
It's actually pretty okay right now.
That's actually the feeling that I got was that I got better over time. But
everything's fine right now.
But that is like, how do you interact? So let's not go map maker. How do map makers interact with the general community? And what are your opinions on how the general community reacts to you?
Usually the map makers don't have much. I mean, do you mean like interaction specifically? Or do you mean like opinion? Because
both.
Okay, so general interaction is kind of almost none. It depends. There are some other map makers who still are around and talk to people. I can say Tim A. He's very active. He'll see him in chats like Sal or Uppatree's Aldo's Discord fairly frequently in there. A couple others. I think he's in M Canning's a lot. Otherwise, everyone else is kind of quiet. They'll come in when like their stuff's being played. I like to try and push their maps out, like Winter, for example. Streams of thousands of people. Sometimes I don't always have a map ready, and sometimes I'll push. Do you want to stop?
No,
okay.
It's fine.
Okay. So there's like, say I don't have a map right now, but -0 made a map and I really like it.
Okay.
I will then be like, ping Winter on Discord, and I'll tell him in chat, like, hey, check your Discord if you're playing with viewers. And he'll check it, he'll load it, and then I'll ping -0, hey, he's playing your map. So that's kind of where that goes.
So
otherwise,
it sounds like there's a big disconnect, actually. Like, you guys just do your maps, and because I think that
for them,
that was one of the reasons why you got popular. And I know there was some drama over actually why you got popular.
Well, let's avoid that for a bit.
Yeah. So, But anyways, like there's this whole things that happen in any scene. It just is weird when you hear about the subsections of a subsection of a subsection has its own drama, and you're like,
why?
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyways, is that you were one of the rare map makers who actually was very vocal that they made a map and that they wanted it to be seen, and that you wanted to interact with the people that would actually have the ability to showcase like you made the connections, right?
I tried to, yeah.
And everyone says it's the most important thing, but then there's also these, I'm not being specific here, I'm just saying in general in scenes, there's these elitists who say that it's purely about skill.
Well,
and not about connections.
Maybe not. So, I think, because this is before me a little bit, where we're going to go, I'm pretty sure when you come to, like, the older map makers, their base was Team Liquid.
Right.
And everything was on Team Liquid.
Yes.
And everyone was talking on Team Liquid.
Right.
And then that Team Liquid fell off, and when I came in, I didn't really use Team Liquid because, honestly, it was kind of dead in the map section. It's worse now because I have my Discord, so everyone's here. But, like, when I was coming in, like, there wasn't really that much action going on. So I'm like, Reddit's way more interesting. And this guy, Fenner, is streaming, and he's funny, and he likes me. I like him.
Okay.
What if I have him try my stuff? And that's where, like, Purified Forge came in. And then I get to you guys when you guys start noticing me.
So when I was on Straight TV.
Yeah, so... Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No
I'm so used to that still. But, yeah, so it was very much not just me putting myself out there. It was all just kind of, like, happening.
Yeah.
There's a really good book called The Outliers. Came out quite a few years now because it was like I was in high school and was already like 5 years old. So it talks about how most success is actually just being in the right place at the right time.
Okay. Yes.
Most success is actually that.
Well,
there's other factors it goes into too, but that was like one of the biggest ones, and just happened to be. It is connections in its own way, but it's also just like this person was feeling good, this person was feeling good. They wanted to do something at the exact same time, and that's kind of what happened. Not to say work was not a part of it.
Right. None of this, anything we talk about is not to say, like, well, you didn't have any skill. Like, that's obviously not true.
No, yeah. But I'm saying it was a different period for them.
Period, yes, yeah.
And it changed. And
this actually is a very, like, coincidental, topical, like, you know, hopefully I upload these in right order. But me and Sion and I just talked about how Team Liquid has kind of fallen off.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like,
a lot of people actually agree.
Even more... Like, because I remember reading Team Liquid. I was scared to join Team Liquid, guys.
It's a terrifying
in 2010. Site. It was kind of terrifying. I thought if I said the wrong thing, like I was stupid, they would ban me type deal.
Oh, I agree.
But anyways, like I remember, like, map makers used to be, like, the shit, right? Like, people would just, like, honor Brood War map makers and would want to be the next big map maker. And it was, like, so cool. That section was always being updated. Yep. And you're right, like, Team Liquid, I talked to him about how content creation has really moved over.
Yeah.
Team Liquid has kind of dropped off as the
it's no longer place to go to.
Yeah, it's no longer got its like.
It's just another place to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's even more so with map makers, and you were almost like the ushering in of the new map maker kind of way of doing things, right? You went to the proper place, and got those.
Well, also there was the point where people were staying, so there used to be this thing called the Map Cave. It was on Skype.
Okay.
That was before my Discord, and they still used Team Liquid, but it was already moving away from that. So I didn't start it, but Skype's a piece of shit program.
Yes,
so once Discord started becoming a thing, I'm like, we need to get out of here. This is so bad.
Yeah.
And I very carefully structured my Discord in a certain way to make it so that really Team Liquid was not needed. Because, granted, Blizzard will look at Team Liquid still. They tell us, like, you should be posting
they literally
there.
have a map contest with Team
Well,
Liquid,
yeah, but even... So now that... I'm not going to tell you too much. The contest is, like, the main way of getting in. But they still do look at, like, threads that you post for maps. So they still recommend you use, like, Reddit, Twitter, if they're following you, hopefully. And then Team Liquid. They'll look at my Discord, too, because they know I'm there and everyone's posting. So it wasn't necessarily me, like... I'm not like Messiah coming in here. Let's get away from the God complex. I just kind of helped push everyone over.
Okay.
And I took over because the Map Cave is a Skype group. There's no moderation really. The people who were the owners of that group were very, very, very OG people who weren't even like in the scene anymore. There was a meme that became the Dota Map Cave for a bit because Dota has the source engine and it's an SDK and they can make their own stuff. So there was a lot of posting between. So I'm like, all right, we need to like actually split and like this is where everything is.
Yeah.
So going back to communication though, like that Discord helps everybody though, because I now have like 4 Blizzard people in there, at least, and they can always ping people.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah, Blizzard, even though they don't talk, I know that they're definitely reading and listening. And granted, not all Blizzard people want to be in the spotlight for totally fair reason. So they'll always like shoot me a message and be like, "Hey, do you have any ideas for this?" And I'll be like, "I don't have, but let me ask." So it's when it comes to the community, some of the older mappers are just from a different period, so they don't really want to interact. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't stop me from helping and make that interaction possible, even if they're not the ones actually doing it. I'm making an interaction between the two, even if it's like a one-way, it's actually me doing it. Does that make sense? So like, let's say
you're forcing two-way communication.
Sort of. So like, let's say one mapper has something really good.
Yeah.
But they're like, just not the person to talk about it.
Okay.
I like their thing. And I tell the community, hey, here's this cool thing.
Yeah.
And then they go, no, they'll like that person. I'll be sure, hey, this was maybe
you're
not by
almost like
me,
a liaison, like
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I do that a lot in Winter's chat because everyone in Winter's chat thinks I make everything, literally everything.
Well, that's one of the as far as like the general populace of StarCraft, well, the ones who aren't just enough in the game to even know what mapmaking is.
Yeah.
It feels like you are the only one that people could really name, despite the other.
Yeah. There's usually
some of the names
two,
that you named. I think people would be like, oh, maybe like I heard that was they literally put their name on the map, so I kind of remember that type deal. But you would be like the only one. Is it? I mean, is that like a too bad? Like, is like, oh, that's too bad that that's the case, or is it actually preferable for some of these guys who just want to make maps and?
I mean, I can't talk for them, but some of them have also just been in it for so long that they just don't care.
It just actually doesn't, like, as long as people play their maps, they're okay?
Usually the thing is it wants to be on ladder. That's what people really care about.
Oh my god, no.
They just, like, stop?
It was like, I'm done.
I didn't know it could do that.
Editing's going to be fantastic. Okay, so we were saying that map makers just want to have their maps on ladder.
Yeah, so usually it's just a ladder thing. Some of the older mappers like myself, Cantuva, we like kind of care, but it's not like direly important most of the time. It'll change for other mappers who have been around but don't really have it on ladder. That's where it gets really dire. I won't name names. There was one recently. Finally did get one in the ladder. It's not a bad map either, at least in my opinion. But it's tough to see someone who's been around for a long time and then like time and time and again, the contest just kind of like screws them over. Mm-hmm. That's so. And then as you get obviously newer people, they really want to be on ladder. It's like the first thing.
Yeah.
Like I remember it was really exciting when Invader got on the ladder. Not because it's a good map, but it's on the ladder. Like people are playing it. Like millions of games around the world on this map that I made. So it's stuff like that that people really care about.
Mostly care about.
Otherwise, then you start getting into other things like, especially now that I'm here in the place that I'm at, some people want this as well. So you get stuff like that. Like
going to Blizzard. And
like having direct line of communication, being in good reputation with good people like you or like Nick and Dan, like anything like that is great. So it depends on who you ask what they want, how long have they been around, what they really want.
What do you really want?
What do you really want?
Yeah. Okay.
Because there are people who have come in the scene, seeing me, go, oh, that must be easy, and they're look how close they are to everybody, and then they'll like try and do what I do, and then they realize, oh, it's not that simple.
Yeah, that's certainly not. This has been the most like Frankenstein project ever. So let's wrap it up here.
It's fitting for a map, huh? Right?
I guess
everything just getting stitched together.
Yeah,
it'll work eventually.
Yeah. So just kind of to wrap everything up. What it sounds like things have actually really improved. So I thought this was going to be more of a hot topic, but it's probably not. But like what could be done better, like as far as the general community can do for map makers, and as far as Blizzard could do for map makers.
Blizzard is I can't say much at the moment because we just had our summit thing. So there's definitely I already kind of like hinted to the map guys like good things are coming. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be like grandiose like 50 bazillion maps in the map pool and like everyone can do anything they want and like you can make like a 256 squared map with like 30,000 bait now. It's not like that. It's a lot of just good small things. I encourage Blizzard to do like more things that they were doing already, but like being a bit more brave. like not to be worried, like stuff like that. Aside from like what community, it's always the same. It's just looking out for us and like making sure that our maps matter to them, because if the players don't like our maps, what's the point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, some mappers will do it for themselves, which is fine, but you know, if I make something, right, I want to be at the point where I can upload something, and people will know I uploaded something, and then that will make them go out and try it. That's the idea. And any mapper should be able to experience that.
Yeah.
So that's like the greatest thing to do. And there are people who like willingly go out and search my stuff and like play it.
Yeah.
And I've gotten messages about that. And I know other mappers have too. So it's kind of like that. Like as a general person, like if you have the time and you want like to see things grow, you know, maybe try out the crazier maps, try out the Redshift, and then give feedback about Redshift. So then it's not just some garbage dumpster fire when it hits ladder.
Bring back Sonog Caverns.
So like not to say Redshift was bad, but I'm just you know what I mean though, right?
Yeah.
Like let's pretend Dasan Station was just a bit more refined.
Okay.
At launch, remember it had a couple headaches on the way.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that, where
Okay.
the more testing that we don't need to constantly go out and barrage people, because it's annoying. It's like going out into a stream and advertising yourself. Like it doesn't.
Well, sometimes literally what you have to do, isn't it? Like
sometimes, yeah.
Like, hey, like play my map.
But I don't even.
test
I mean,
it.
like as like a streamer, like it's really annoying to
Yeah,
see
of course,
someone
yeah.
talk about themselves, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel good for us to go out there and act like some like beggar,
Mhm.
right? Granted, I don't have that feeling anymore because like people generally know who I am, and I usually go to trusted people who know who I am as well.
Yeah.
But like if like some like Negative Zero, you know I know him and probably you know him and a couple other people. Not everybody knows him. So him to kind of just walk around and like just say, hey, do this. It's kind of like, fuck are you? Like, so
Yeah.
so
Just
that's the idea.
Yeah, more. I guess I don't know. Acceptance isn't the right word, but acknowledgement, so that you guys can get your testing done.
Because the way to think about it is if you guys play our stuff more often and test it, it makes ladder easier for everybody.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. It's so hard though to get like everyone. The last thing that casual players think about is maps. Really.
Oh, yeah.
Like they might, if something's really, really messed up, or if like a friend tells them like, yeah, that map's bad for Protoss, they're gonna.
Yeah,
That's the only thing they'll hook onto.
And
they
that's
won't-
just a human factor.
Yeah, of course. So it's really, it still comes down to Blizzard for a lot of these like movements, like the TLMC and whatnot. But
Yeah.
it's really cool to hear what you were talking about in that they actually are paying attention and have like feelers and actually contact you.
One of the Blizzard guys' names, I won't say his full thing, but Ryan. His name's Ryan, and he used to be a community guy for mapping, and now he's in Blizzard. And during they kind of messed up because the timing was a little wonky, but they added a thing where during the contest now, if you go to the custom section, it'll show you all the finalists.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it popped up and was like,
Yeah.
play these maps.
Yeah,
Like,
it was a
I remember
little
that.
off-timed because when
Yes.
it actually finally worked, voting was over. So it was like, you guys tried, and I applaud you for that.
Yeah, maybe
But
next
so, like,
time.
so next time it should be really good. So it's stuff
Yeah.
like that where it's like, hey, check out this community stuff. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
That's really helpful.
Okay.
If we could get a way to have like maybe off-season contests where Blizzard's just like trying to get us to like do things and have people try these maps, would be great. But it's all just ideal.
Getting people to actually use your stuff.
Yeah, that's
Kind
the,
of
that's the hard part is getting actual.
The
user engagement.
TLDR, but it's also the hardest part.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks.
And, obligatory, like, sorry for all the editing that's going to have to happen
Bits
here.
of editing, yeah.
Sorry, guys. But I really appreciate you sitting down and talking. Like, obviously, we could do an hour on, like, each one of these, like, tiny topics.
Yeah.
There's so
It's
much
really broad.
to go over. But hopefully there'll be more opportunities for you to get your word out, as well as some of the other map makers. Would be really awesome. So just thanks again. And if you want to do any shout outs, like, feel free.
Just before I do that, if you guys have questions about mapping, you can always just ask me directly. I'm pretty active on Twitter. I actually don't remember what my handle is. I've changed my handle so many times. Yeah, see, I've changed it a couple times. Yeah, so it's the original name. So it's Avex, that's how it's normally spelled, and then YLI at the end. That's what the original name was, and I said this is too long and complicated, so I shortened it. But Avex is not available on Twitter, so.
Okay.
So yeah, you can always shoot me questions, and then my Discord is also, I'm pretty sure it's on there. It should be there. I know I have it on Team Liquid as well, and on my Twitch page too. If you scroll down enough, you'll find a Discord link.
Cool.
So everyone can find me there. Otherwise, shout-outs, I don't have anything else. I don't do enough anymore. I'm too busy working.
Yeah.
It's just if you have questions, anyone has questions, I'm more than open to answer.
Yeah, if this didn't just make it sound completely daunting, then, shoot him questions and get into it.
If you're not terrified from everything I just said.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Enjoy the editing.
Yeah.